So, welcome to this Q&A session. It's an honor to have you here today, Anika. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time. Also to all of the girls. It's not obvious on Sunday morning to wake up early, but it's very nice to see so many engaged and interested young people. I would like to start with introducing myself. My name is Carmen Engele. Many of you already know me. I'm the Austrian ambassador of the ShakthiSAT mission. I've been coordinating most of the meetings, most of the stuff going on internally, and I'm very happy to be here today with Nicole. We will introduce ourselves also delegation-wise, starting from where the girls are from, maybe also for you, Anika, to get an overview where all the girls are from, what we do, and all that kind of stuff. So, Nicole, if you want, you can gladly start introducing the Italian part.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Zinna, the Italian ambassador for the ShakthiSAT mission. It is a great honor and pleasure to welcome you on behalf of Italy to this extraordinary mission and event, part of our shared mission, ShakthiSAT. Before I begin telling you about the Italian role in this mission, I would like to take a moment to extend a warm welcome to a truly inspiring guest, Dr. Anika Mehlis. We are deeply honored to have you here with us.
Thanks.
Today, yeah, today we are not just here to talk about science or technology, but we gather to share experiences, engage across cultures, and give voice to the young women who step by step are enthusiastically contributing to a project that looks far ahead. And representing Italy, we have 98 young girls, women from all the country, from the north to the south, from the Tyrrhenian and Adriatic coast to the Alps and the islands. Each participant carries their own story, accent, and unique perspective, yet they all share the same spark, curiosity. This mission is more than just an academic exercise, it is a real opportunity to apply technical skills, learn teamwork, and engage with professional sessions, collaborating in international groups, such as today's one, and contribute ideas and proposals to the mission. The Italian girls' commitment is part of a long Italian tradition in space exploration, represented by institutions like the Italian Space Agency and inspiring figures such as astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti. This journey involves study, collaboration, critical thinking, but also enthusiasm and discovery. On behalf of Italy and all our participants, thank you, Anika, for inspiring us to look beyond the sky. I now hand over to Carmen, the Austrian ambassador, as you know, and she will introduce the Austrian Space Agency and guide us through the next part of this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole, for your quick presentation. I will start by introducing the Austrian delegation. Let's start off. Thank you so much for Nicole for introducing Italy. I'm the Austrian ambassador, so I'm going to introduce our participants from Austria real quick. We have over 50 participants, which I'm quite proud of, across all 9 regions of Austria. So again, people from the Alps in Tyrol, from Vorarlberg, all over to the Burgenland, and of course, a lot of people coming and joining us from Vienna. We're also currently establishing regional groups to kind of have like the interconnection. And it's very inspiring to see how engaged everybody is, how excited everybody is. And yeah, it's truly remarkable to have this kind of community of curiosity, as you already mentioned, Nicole. Let me go over and introduce the Austrian Space Forum. As Nicole already said, Anika is here on behalf of the Austrian Space Forum. She's been working as an analog astronaut for a few years now. So I will give you a short introduction what the Austrian Space Forum actually does. So as a quick intro, OWF is like the German abbreviation for Österreichisches Weltraumforum, in case anyone from the German-speaking part is wondering. But yeah, in English is the Austrian Space Forum. So what does the Austrian Space Forum actually do? It's a research organization established over like 25 years ago now. It was initially created by like a citizen science initiative. So it really like was started out of curiosity by citizens itself, by scientists to kind of pursue some bigger goals in the astronaut or like space industry in Austria. And nowadays it's led by professionals. We have a lot of different departments, as you're going to see later, and it's over 300 members today. There are like a few sections we're specializing on. So first of all, we have like the hardware, which is kind of more the research part. So we have two spacesuit simulators. I'm going to talk about the more prominent one afterwards. And you can just like imagine everything can be tested on those kind of spacesuits. And they're like different aspects out of like, for instance, power connection or some other things. I'm sure Anika can tell you more on that. And yeah, and then we also have some analog rovers. For instance, one was constructed in cooperation with HTL, so like a upper high school in Austria, if anybody of the girls of Austria is interested in that. Also, by the way, we always take interns. So if anyone is interested, can also be girls from Italy, all over Austria, of course. There always are those summer internships. I did one myself like 5 years ago or something, and I can highly recommend it. If you want, you can reach out afterwards to me. I'm also gonna include it in some like follow-up email, but just so you know, keep that in mind. It's a super cool opportunity. Then, as I said before, we have more also research going on. We have planetary surface operations, and also we work a lot of a lot in remote science support. So you can imagine each of the Mars analog missions where we are coming next is um, constructed by like different kind of sections. So we have the Mission Support Center, where I, as an intern, also worked for some time, for instance. And then we have like remote science support, we have flight planning, and we have all kind of those parts that really, yeah, make sure that all of the analog mission is going smoothly. And it's very interesting. So feel also free to contact me on that. As I already said, international Mars analog simulations are a big thing for the Austrian Space Forum. We're really one of the leading institutes worldwide. Also, there's the world's biggest analog coming up, also an analog Mars mission, and the headquarters of the Mission Support Center is going to be in Vienna, hosted by the Austrian Space Forum. So that's very exciting. We're really pushing frontiers on that. But let me quickly go over to the spacesuit simulator. So the AUDA, that's the name of the spacesuit, has been used in the Amity 20 mission, for instance. And it's kind of like a spaceship to wear. So you're kind of like protected from different things. I'm sure everybody of you knows that the like spacesuits protect you from radiation, from the different temperature kind of like differences. And that's kind of like simulating all of the effects. We have from the Austrian Space Forum over 20 trained analog astronauts. Some of them are still active, some of them are already retired, but I think that also shows kind of the quantity and quality. We kind of have, I'm going to show you some inputs of the trainings afterwards. And we have over 900 hours of simulated EVAs, so the extravehicular activities. You can imagine that, for instance, the Amity 20 mission was like hosted in like a desert. I'm going to show that to you afterwards. And of course, you have like kind of some main base where all the other analog astronauts live. And then there are those extravehicular activities. So you really kind of like put on your spacesuit, the outer spacesuit, which is called donning. And then you exit kind of your main base, go outside, do some research, do some experiments, and other stuff. And yeah, we've concluded over 900 hours of that. Until now, we're over like 13 Mars analog missions we did. So we're really have like a wide variety of things. And with that, I want to thank you guys all for this little introduction. And if there are not any questions, I would like to go on to the kind of Q&A part. So as I already mentioned, we're going to be starting with the anonymous questions. You surely remember that you girls could either choose to do it, yeah, anonymously, so that Nicole and I will be directing it to Anika. But then also in the end, you will have the opportunity to ask direct questions. But first of all, I would like to ask Anika to maybe quickly introduce herself before going on to the Q&A part.
Okay, thank you very much. As I said before, it's really nice seeing all those pictures and hearing somebody tell people about it. And I don't know if you remember in the short video, you could see one person in the spacesuit sitting on the quad and driving through the desert. So that was me. And every time I watched that, I'm like, oh, this was so much fun. And that's actually like the main driver that, of course, you have big visions for what you can bring to humanity, stuff like that. But in the end, I think the personal gain has to be that what you try to do makes you be happy in the morning that you're able to do it. So yeah, sorry, just a quick loop that was still open in my head. I had to get it out. Yeah, so my name is Anika. I'm actually 43 years old already by now. I have 3 kids that I gave birth to myself and 3 more with my second partner. I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. So in the beginning, after high school, I decided to spend a year abroad. And after that, I still didn't quite know what to do. So I decided to study something that I really liked at school. So I did my first master's degree in biology, actually microbiology. And I like from the beginning, I took in everything that I could. So during my studies, I did a lot of side quests in paleoanthropology, anatomy, whatever I could lay my hands on. Then life kind of happened and I moved back home, had kids, had boring everyday jobs in a lab or teaching, stuff like that. And every time I mean, I wouldn't say I got bored, but like my mind wanted something more and I wanted to learn again. So I started studying again. I did a second master's degree in engineering, environmental engineering. And then I worked for a few years in the public health department, actually. And before COVID, most people didn't know what those departments do, but during COVID, then people kind of got to know them better. Anyways, yeah. And then more than 7 years ago, I saw an ad in my local newspaper, and it said that the Austrian Space Forum is looking for new analog astronauts. And I did not have any clue what that was. So I Googled and found the website, and it sounded so amazing and so fascinating and yeah, like a big adventure. And by that time, I started my PhD in public health. So I was quite busy already. But still, yeah, I was like, okay, I have to try. If I don't try, I mean, I didn't think that it would work. But if I didn't try, I would always tell myself, why didn't you just, you know, at least give it a go? So I applied, and to my surprise, I actually got invited to Innsbruck for the first selection round. And in the beginning, I was standing there amongst like 30 people. All of them had PhDs, flying licenses, diving licenses, several masters, spoke like 5 languages. You get the picture. And I was there like, okay, I'm a mom from a little town in the middle of nowhere. I have no space experience whatsoever. Why did they invite me? But during the selection, I kind of, you know, started to feel like I know why it would make sense. And I actually made it through the first round and the second round. And in the end, I was selected, the only woman in the class and also the only person from Germany. And yeah, it kind of felt like in Germany we say Arsch on Eimer. So like, you know, it really was a good fit because to become an analog astronaut and also an astronaut, you need a lot of things that I accidentally kind of have. So you need curiosity and joy of learning. And it's also good to be very diverse in your academic pursuits. And actually, you need to be open to new experiences. And there's a lot of, I would say, like soft skills that are also very important. So like teamwork, but also be able to lead people. But then again, gave up leadership if needed and do what people tell you. You have to be able to, you know, pass hours of boredom, but also then if something happens, you have to react really quick and be creative in your solutions. So yeah, to not make the story too long, that's kind of what I brought to the table. And I actually sometimes feel that having several kids kind of helped with that because multitasking is kind of the thing that I learned from that. Yeah, and that's how I came to be an astronaut. And I had the honor to be part of the crew for the Israel mission. And then for Armenia last year, I actually was a commander of the crew. And it has been a wild ride and a great experience. Yeah, that's what I can think of to tell you beforehand. And now I would really love to answer all those good questions that I kind of saw beforehand, a few of them at least. And I want to extend before I start answering that if you have any more questions afterwards, and if you need any tips or connections or whatever, always feel free to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram. Just write me. I don't bite. I'm always happy to help. And yeah, let's get started.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, as you can already see, Anika is so kind to be here on like Sunday morning. So really, if you have any further questions, I'm sure she's going to help you a lot. And yeah, a lot of interesting inputs because maybe for the girls, it looks from the outside, oh wow, you always knew you want to be an astronaut and it was like super straight and everything. But yeah, it's always inspiring also to see that everybody's just human and we all go through those things. And yeah, very, very nice. So yeah, I would like to start off with the question on how does it feel to be so impactful to many young people? Because of course it's your job, but at the same time you're kind of a role model to many.
Yeah, actually, sometimes it's a little bit scary, in a sense that I feel that I have a responsibility maybe. When I started the analog astronaut role and had my first like media events or talks, I was really nervous. I was not the kid in school that liked talking in front of people, but you get used to almost everything. So now I really enjoy doing those things. And that's why I extended the invitation before. My experience has been that I got some help from people along the way. And the whole topic of being a woman or in the STEM field or just being a woman in this world kind of, is a topic along the way that I have carried with me, even though it didn't impact my own life to a degree that I was aware in the beginning. Yeah, I kind of really feel the responsibility by having a voice to support other people, no matter the gender. But of course, women, and since I didn't say before, but all my 6 kids are girls. So yeah, I really feel that it's a responsibility, but also, yeah, I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to talk to young people, inspire them, help them along the way. Yeah.
Thank you. We have another question. Was it always your dream to be an analog astronaut?
No, it wasn't, because I didn't even know that existed. And actually, looking back, I did really like flying astronaut stuff. I went to science museums as a kid, but I really never had the idea that that could be me. And I think also looking at the first question, that was mostly due to not having any visible role models. And I did not start being an analog astronaut because I wanted to be an astronaut. But then when ESA had the selection 3 years ago, I think by now, 2 years, 3 years, I did apply. And I made it to the round where you go to Hamburg to have all the selection tests. And I actually, John McFall, the parent astronaut from Great Britain, he was on my group. So yeah, that was quite nice when we were on the WhatsApp chat then afterwards, and people got to the next round, and everyone was congratulating him. Sorry, kind of got sidetracked. But anyway, no, it wasn't my dream. The short answer is, but once I got into the whole space field, I started to have the dream to become an astronaut, or also like when I went to the selection, I really wanted to make it and to be the analog astronaut. And I'm really happy with where I am now. And yeah, just to solve the question, I'm not looking to become an astronaut anymore because I got all the astronauting that I like in my life by the way it is now. But it's still something that I'm, following and yeah, looking forward to seeing more people and more women on that way in the future.
Sure. As you've already mentioned, it's really nice to also see women maybe have those roles and kind of, yeah, have more role models for the upcoming generations. Exactly. So maybe another questions tying more to the mission itself. So what do you think is the most difficult thing to simulate in the deserts themselves, when you were looking at aspects of the Martian environment?
Mm-hmm. So to make or to clear up some assumptions, people kind of ask me, how do you simulate the weightlessness or the less gravity, for example? And of course, we cannot simulate that on Earth, at least not without a lot of technical effort and so on. So what we do simulate is, as you already mentioned, Carmen, the workflows and the interface between technology and humans by using the spacesuit simulators, living in a base, going out only in the spacesuit, and so on. And by having the time delay between the mission support center in, let's say, Vienna for MOD 24 and the base in Armenia. So there's a 20-minute time delay. If you have a question and you pose it, then the answer will get to you only a lot of minutes later. And you can imagine that if on the ISS they have a lamp blinking, they can tell Houston we have a problem, and then they will look up in their manuals and tell you, okay, you need to pull that trigger or switch or whatever. That will not work on Mars. So people going to Mars will have to be way or a lot more independent. They will have different skill sets, tools, workflows. And that's what we try to simulate to kind of get out the kinks and see what works and what doesn't. And I would say what the most difficult thing to simulate is, even though we go to remote places on Earth, is the actual isolation. Because on Mars, you will only have the crew that goes there. But on Earth, of course, we do have a support team around us. So we have on-site support, or GOST as it was called in Armenia. That's a group of about 10 to 12 people looking for our needs, working with the rovers and so on. And that role will be played by robots on Mars later on. So if you do the mission on Earth, even though you're kind of, isolated, you always see other people in the corner of your eye, and you're not totally isolated. And you also mentioned before that we are trying to simulate or to work on some psychological studies as well. And isolation and confinement and also the knowledge that help is not there, that whatever happens, you will have to figure it out yourself. That is something that has an immense impact on human psychology and group dynamics and so on. So that's something that we try to simulate, but it's really hard to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have already mentioned it, but what has been the most psychologically challenging aspect for analog missions, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I actually didn't mention the one thing that was the biggest challenge. So I think, especially after COVID, where people were confined to their homes and had to deal with the whole psychological stress that put on them, everyone can imagine what it feels like to be in a closed quarters for 4 weeks. So I think that 4 weeks are not that bad on the psychological side if you are prepared that that's what's going to happen. But still, that was very interesting to me there's a thing called the three-quarter phenomenon, that is suggesting that in every mission, if you go to Antarctica for 1 year to overwinter, or you are in prison for a sentence, or you are in hospital because of a treatment for several weeks, then after about 3/4 of the time, you get like a low, because the excitement and everything from the beginning, even the negative stress, is over. Things calm down and you have a routine, but the time until the end is still so much that it's nothing that you can already look forward to. So people kind of tend to have more conflict, be a little bit depressed, sleep worse, not have the best health, stuff like that. And even though we were prepared for that, it was really interesting to watch yourself get into that and not being able to do much about it. So that was one thing. And the other thing was very fascinating to be on the inside, how fast you go from an us perspective as a big team, like the whole AWF doing this mission, to a us versus them kind of point of view. So you tend to have your little group of crew inside the habitat, and then you start to get annoyed with the support team around you or with Earth, because they give you tasks where you're like, oh, don't they know that we are so tired, we can't do that anymore, stuff like that. And also we were prepared for that, but still it happened. And having communication through only text chat, time delayed, makes it so difficult to transport emotion or like nuance in talking. And that made me aware that if you have a Mars mission where you go for several years, months and years, and I think the crew will have a very, very strong us versus them mindset. And everything that you do will have to make sure that they don't lose connection to Earth, like from the mental psychology perspective. Yeah, and that was the second most impressive and difficult thing to observe for me.
Yeah, interesting to hear, maybe also from your perspective. And maybe also connecting to that answer, what do you think if we do end up going to Mars and maybe also staying there for a longer period of time, how would everyday life be different from here on Earth, maybe apart from the obvious things?
Well, you would have more time on your hands because days on Mars are 34 something-ish minutes longer than on Earth. So you can all try to think what you would like to do with those 30 more minutes, sleep, eat, play, whatever. And I think the second thing, if you really like do the mind acrobatics to think that it's possible, we will never be able to live on Mars without like a habitat or some technology that saves us from the radiation, the atmosphere. Since Mars doesn't have a magnetic field, even through, let's say, terraforming, you will never be able to sustain an atmosphere that we need. So we would live underneath, for example, glass ceilings or something. Anyway, so the dependence on technology would always be a big factor. And I mean, we are kind of used to that because our daily lives would not be, comprehensible without all the technology. So it might not be a big leap, but the environment would be a lot more difficult to live in. And I think that's the main thing that I can think of, but that's something else I learned from the missions. Probably it would be something totally different that we don't think of now. For example, that sunsets are blue, or that the weight, like the less gravity would make everything less heavy, and you would be able to do bodily things you would never be able to do on Earth, and that will change your whole human experience. I don't know. Yeah, so the things that we know already are clear, but I think the ones we don't will be the bigger ones.
Yeah. We have a lot of curiosity, as you can imagine, from girls here. And I have a question to ask, which asks, did you source and reuse your water on mission Amity 20?
Yeah, actually, a very interesting question, because sustainability will be like the main or a big thing to make do with the resources that we have. And we actually did have a very thought out water system, or the whole habitat system, because it was a standalone thing in the middle of the desert. You didn't have any, pre-built electricity, water, whatever. So the water supply was a big tank on the roof, so it was limited. We had only a limited amount per person and day. So showers were only possible every 3 days after an EVA, and only short ones and cold ones. Yeah, and then the water we used for showering or for cooking was put into a wastewater sink or like a wastewater container, and that water was used, the gray water was used for toilet flushing, stuff like that, cooling. And after that, it was deposed in a big tank that was afterwards recycled and brought away. So it was a closed system. It was not usable, so we did not like clear the water that we used to reuse it like you would do on the ISS. But at least we like were really resourceful and did not waste any water. And in Armenia, I have to say, it was a little bit more wasteful because yeah, we got water delivered every week, and could use more of it. And you could tell that once you know that there's an unlimited supply, you start being more wasteful, even though you try to still be thoughtful about it. Yeah.
Sure, but very interesting concept, because of course that's also going to be applied maybe going to Mars or already on the ISS. Maybe circling back to how you became an analog astronaut, maybe just yeah, tell us about what kind of training you did to have to get hired or accepted.
So before the first selection round, I did not really know what to expect. They told me to be physically fit and to prepare the best I can. So I researched and found some training data from ESA actually that I kind of did on my laptop, which might have been helpful. I don't know. But the first selection was mainly, you saw some pictures, so academic tests, just general knowledge, and no one could know all those questions, or answers to the questions. And then there was physical tests like the Cooper test. I don't know if you know that it's like the same you do if you want to go to police school, for example. You have to run for a certain amount of time, and they check in a table how fast or how far you could run, and then they compare to your group. But most of the tests were like the whole selection was more like a test in a test. So you never knew what they were really looking for. One example, you had to sort rice grains. So you got a plate in front of you and chopsticks, and then you had white and black rice on your plate. And you had 1 hour to sort the rice and to count it. So you had to have 2 piles in the end, and you had to give an average how many you think there are. And people went about it like everyone had their own technique and so on. And I was in the zone, and I was like sorting and really concentrating. In my head, I don't know, I was just out. And after a while, I was surprised because somebody was standing up and like pushing their table away and swearing and walking out. And then I was like, ooh, what happened? And then I looked up and I saw that a lot of people were in the room walking around, clicking pens next to people's ears, like accidentally bumping into their table. And after like 45 minutes, one person went around the room and put more rice on the plates, where you had already your order and everything. And then I realized they were not only looking for how you can concentrate and work repetitive tasks, but they were also checking for frustration tolerance. And of course, I can tell you that the person that got up and was swearing and went out did not get further selected. So stuff like that. But also you had to work with the spacesuit, you had to give an interview, you had to listen to a lecture, and then you had like half an hour, and then you had to give your own presentation on the stuff that you just heard. So they checked for all the different, kind of skill sets that you would need later on. And the second selection round was more like medical selection. We went to a hospital for 1 day, and they checked everything. I've never been so thoroughly checked through in my whole life. Stuff like that to make sure that you will be able to do the job later on. And the training for, like when I got selected, then we had 5 months of basic training. And that training was, and there were also some of the pictures that you showed, a lot of geology, because going to Mars, the main thing we are going to do is look for traces of life, or maybe ancient life, microbiological life. So you need to know geology. Then we had quad bike training, navigation by the stars, orbital mechanics, spacesuit systems. So you name it, it was a lot of lectures, a lot of hands-on training. And then once you get selected for a mission, there's a lot of mission-specific training where you go through all the experience. You have to learn the spacesuit simulator. You have to know all the connections, the software, the hardware, and everything. So yeah, I could go on like this for half an hour. So it's a lot to learn. And that's actually, as I said before, I really enjoy being able to, steer a drone, program something for the spacesuit, do microbiology. When I did my first microbiology, sorry guys, the long word. So anyway, my first lab experience in Israel, I in the evening when we were able to write emails to our families, I wrote to my parents, "Oh, finally my studies paid off." So yeah, it's very a big variety of skills and knowledge, and yeah, it's a long process to train for that role.
Yeah, but we have a very generic question. What has been the biggest challenge in your career?
Yeah, I saw that question before and I was like, oh, I don't know. I think the biggest challenge has been to know myself and to decide on so many points, because I've never been big on deciding. Every time there's like 5 doors in front of me, I want to go through all of them. And I really had to start to accept that first, that's me, I'm not going to change. And second, that's my like strength. And yeah, so I decided to kind of learn to go through one door and keep the others open, and maybe go through one on the side with my other leg kind of. And to know what's right at every point. That was the biggest challenge. But also, to be honest, I mean, I said I have kids, so having kids and having a career, it is a big challenge. And a lot of the things that I did, like studying my second master's degree or my PhD, all of that I did at night, kind of. I did have kids and I did work at the time, so that was on the side just for fun because I wanted to do it. And that was really difficult sometimes. I have spent a lot of nights crying and like feeling like I want to not keep on doing this PhD. It took me 6 years because I did it like on the side. Yeah, but I kept going because I liked what I was doing, not because of the goal, not because I wanted to like call myself Dr. Anika, but because I really liked the subject, the subject, and that was what kept me going. Yeah, but in the beginning, people were always like, "Ooh, and you are a role model for having kids and a career, and you can show people that you can do it." And I kind of felt like that in the beginning, but after a while, I was like, "No, not everyone can do it. It's really difficult, and you need a lot of support. You need, yeah, like the system around you is important, and there's a lot of things that still need to change to make it more accessible and easier." And that's like my message, that yes, it's possible, but not without a lot of effort and throwbacks and support and tears. So yeah.
Of course, from the outside, it always looks like, wow, you're doing it all at the same time. But I think it's important to keep in mind that there's a lot of effort going in, as you just said. And maybe the next question also like connects to that, and whether you feel like it's more difficult for you as a woman, maybe in STEM, maybe also like in a just demanding job, and also being a mother. And maybe do you have any tips, or
Yeah.
how would you do that?
Yeah. So one thing that, like, to both questions, the one before and this one, I think it's really important to keep in mind that you have time, because I myself feel it sometimes, that you feel this urgency, like this, everyone is passing you by, and you have to do it now. And if you don't get the internship this summer, then whatever, and so on. And that's not a reality. If you like looking back on what I did, I'm 43, as I said. I did not do all those things at 18 and overnight. I like did one after the other, and sometimes I really felt like everyone else can do more because they don't have kids or whatever. But in the end, like the sum of the things is what you look back on later on, and then it will make sense and look like a straight line, but it's not. So that's very important. I also tell my own girls, yes, you do have to like decide on the first step, but maybe you will change direction later on, and that's no biggie. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just do what you love and then go step by step. So that, yeah. But that said, yeah, I'm not sure because I've never had the male perspective. And for example, some of my colleagues from the team in Israel, afterwards, all the reporters asked me what it was like to not see my kids, what did my family say, stuff like that. And I was like, people, my kids are like 7 and 9 and 11. They have a dad. They're fine, yeah. But my colleagues, 3 of them had small kids, and the daughter was 4 weeks old when he left. So he was kind of heartbroken. It was really hard for him to not see his kid in this stage of his life. And then the reporters did not ask him. And that we talked amongst ourselves as a team. And when I got the questions, I was like, yeah, this and that, but would you please ask my colleagues because they have really small kids? And they were like, oh, we didn't think of that. And then they talked to them. So it was also difficult for my male colleagues to not be seen as family people. And it was like normal, they leave their kids, even though it was not for them. Okay. So I just want to open the perspective that it's not easy for everyone. But of course, I feel that as a woman, there's a lot of points where you can have difficulties. So being from former Eastern Germany, for me, it was always like my mom is an engineer and she was always working and also having kids. So it was not like in my head, I did not have this barrier that it's not possible for me, fortunately. And I'm really thankful for this privilege, to be honest. And I studied and I had kids and I worked and I did not really think about the whole thing. But now looking back, and also the last, let's say, 5 years, it kind of opened my eyes to many ways that I was still gender biased and not like, yeah, the fact I did not think about becoming an astronaut earlier in my life, I attribute to that, for example. And also, I do have a great husband and a great partner. So having the kids and juggling, and he can do his things and I can do my things, works out. But that's also not like guaranteed. So open your eyes when looking for partners, what I tell my daughters. Yeah. And I think there's another question coming to that, but I will say it already. Build groups as you do now, work together, hype each other, support each other, and ask for help. Look for other women that can support you. I think that's the way to go. That all those alt-white men groups and clubs already realized centuries ago that if you support each other, we are really a big power to reckon with. Yeah.
Yeah. We have one last anonymous question before moving to the in-person one. It says, how are physiological and physical health issues monitored by and managed throughout analog missions to ensure crew well-being?
Yeah. As Carmen mentioned before, the spacesuit simulators that we work with, they are actually one of the main reasons not more women are selected as analog astronauts. So there's only Carmen Köhler, my colleague, and me actually right now as women, because they're very heavy. They weigh up to 50 kilos, and we have to train, like weight training and so on, a lot before the missions to be fit enough to work with them. If you have carried that for 4 hours through the desert, you really feel like you ran a marathon. And you get a muscle ache every time and bruises. So that's really heavy and also dangerous. There's a lot of things that can happen. And even though we train and we prepare and have all the security measures in place, yeah, it's a real probability that somebody gets hurt or sick or whatever. And we do have a team of human factors consisting of medical doctors, BMEs, and also psychologists that are there for the well-being of the crew, of course, and also the on-site support people, and also everyone supporting an MSC, also Mission Support Center. We have like from the technology side, once you wear the spacesuit simulator, you have an ECG on your person, and they monitor a lot of like heart rate and O2, humidity, temperature in the suit and stuff like that. And also the medical doctors have the last say. So if they see the data of the analog astronaut and it doesn't look good to them, if they are afraid of heat stroke or exhaustion or whatever, they are the ones that can always call off the EVA and tell people to go back to base. And we also have safeties. That's one person per suit that is unsuited and in the back, like simulating looking after the analog astronaut. So they are trained to react, because if you're in the suit, you're not able to get it off yourself. So if there's, for example, a fire in the backpack where the batteries are, you would not be able to save yourself. So there's also a buddy system. So we always go out in pairs. Like if you go diving, you also have this buddy system that you check each other. Yeah, and all of us are trained in first aid. So we have a lot of first aid training to, you know, if I ever come to an accident, I would totally know what to do. You have to train so much that it's in your sleep. So if I see somebody lying there in a puddle of blood, I would not panic. I would know what to do. So there's a lot of effort to prepare and also to react if something happens. And I'm sure I'm forgetting things, but that's what I can think of as answer to this question.
Yeah, interesting to see, for sure. Yeah, I would like to conclude with this, the anonymous section, and now start with the girls asking you questions directly. So, for instance, Elena Jacobe, if you could just unmute yourself and maybe ask what you want to ask Anika.
Yes. Hi, I have three questions. The first one is, was there ever a moment when you felt like you couldn't continue your career due to a major obstacle, and what motivated you to keep going?
I have had several points when you say career, like from the perspective of working, where I felt like what I am doing at that moment will like not, it won't work anymore. So the first time was when I was working my first real job, let's say in a lab, an environmental lab. I had two kids at the time. I was working like shifts in the mornings, evenings, weekends. And the boss of the laboratory was a real not nice person. Very choleric and screaming at us sometimes in front of customers, stuff like that. It was crazy. Anyway, and I was kind of feeling that if I quit that job, I would not find another one, and I needed the money, and I felt insecure. I was in the end of my 20s. And I had a great group of other moms actually in the kindergarten group of my kids. And one evening I met them, and the leader of the kindergarten, she had like a flip chart, and she was like writing the question, what made you happy today and what didn't? And I came into the room and I broke out into tears, and everyone was like, "Wow, what happened?" And I told them all about the job and how I was struggling for several months with the decision to quit or not. And all of them were like, "Oh, you go and quit, and you kick his ass. You tell him to stuff it wherever, and you will always find something else. You're so amazing, and you will do it," and stuff like that. I went home. I wrote my I'm looking for the word. Anyway, the letter telling my boss I'm going to quit. Resignation, that's it. And my husband was like, "Yeah, finally." And the next day I went into his office. I gave him the letter. I told him that I'm quitting because of the way he treats his employees. And on the way out, one of my colleagues came downstairs to say bye, and she was like, "Oh, you know what he's telling people? He's telling them you quit because you have burnout." And I was like, okay, he will never learn his lesson. But anyway, not my circus, not my monkeys. And I quit, and it took me 1 month, and then I got the job in the public health department, which opened like a whole new avenue because I had the position of a medical doctor, even though I wasn't a medical doctor. I was a biologist, and by then I had the engineering degree. And it was like a perfect fit at that time. I learned so many things. I learned to lead a team. I had 12 people in my team. I learned a lot about, public health and infectious diseases, stuff like that. And it eventually led me to do my PhD in that area because I really liked the subject. So looking back, like it was perfect. It was so good. I did this change. And again, I quit the public health department shortly before COVID, actually, just coincidence. And again, I quit my part-time lecturing job last year to be fully self-employed because by now I'm a systemic counselor, counseling people, doing trauma sensitive counseling, stuff like that. So yeah, my career path is like really winding, and I have 3 separate points where I was like, no, I can't go on. This is not it anymore. And it was not easy. It was not like, oh, okay, let's do something else. I was always very much afraid that I wouldn't, find something else, that this is the end, that I would lose all the experience and the connections I built in one field. But I was always able to, carry it to the next field, to apply it there and to use those connections and everything that I already experienced. So I'm very happy I did that. And that's also what I tell people, to encourage them to follow what they feel is right and to not be too afraid. And of course, I'm aware that you need the privilege of being financially secure, for example, to be able to do this. I don't want to think that or to tell people it's easy. But yeah, I think a certain amount of maybe naivete, but courage helped me a lot.
Yeah, I think it's also comforting to hear maybe for the girls that are in front of like a decision going to uni later on maybe, or also going, maybe deciding on which high school to go to. And yeah, I've heard that many times also from my experience in like the retrospective, it kind of looks like, it makes sense. But in the situation itself, it may not always be that easy. So thank you for sharing, Annika. And I would like to give the word to Irene Salman to ask her question.
Good morning. You may have already answered this question, maybe some indirect way, but what would you say to your younger self if you were to start over your journey in the field of STEM disciplines?
Yeah, I'm not sure because maybe 10 years ago, I think I would have given a different answer. By now, I think everything I ever did kind of led me to where I am now, and I'm very happy where I am. I am really, I like my life, I like my work, I like my family. It kind of worked out, and I feel like all the hard times and all the decisions and everything paid off. So I don't know if I would do anything different. I mean, the trousers of time, you never know what would happen otherwise. And if I had not, quit, like when I finished my master's degree in biology and microbiology, I had the opportunity to do a PhD directly in the afterwards. And I decided not to do it because by then I was freshly married and I had 3 years of far distance relationship with my then husband. And we decided to move back in together in our hometown, and I got the first job in the laboratory. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what would have happened if I stayed. I studied in Berlin. If I had stayed in Berlin and did my PhD back then, maybe I would not have stayed together with my husband. Maybe I would not have had my kids. Maybe I would have been, I don't know, a professor for microbiology. I don't know. And maybe I would have been happy then as well. Probably there's so many different, things that could have happened in my life. But I'm quite sure that everything was for a reason, or at least in the retrospective, I can give it a reason. So I don't think I would change much. I would tell myself to, sorry, I just a quick add on that. I would tell myself to look for others and to connect more, to, build more groups and to ask for help, because I kind of was raised to be tough and do it myself. And that's something that I had to unlearn, unfortunately. But I did unlearn that. And yeah, that's something that would have helped maybe along the way to connect more.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, that sometimes getting help or getting support is a very strong thing to do. And as I said, it's also very nice to see the community here growing also with the regional networks. Yeah, then I would like to ask Nicoletta Borsan for a question.
Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I have two questions. The first one is more personal, and I wanted to ask you, what are your future goals and plans?
To keep doing what I love. It's a very quick answer. So yeah, I just wrote a book about the whole selection process and the missions and so on. It's in German yet, unfortunately, so maybe it will get translated to English later. Yeah, and that told me that I would like to keep writing books. So the next one will be about something totally different. And I love counseling, and I really hope that I can stay in the Austrian Space Forum in some capacity or the other. I'm going to be director of operations for the MSC for the world's biggest analog, so kind of co-leading the mission support center in Vienna. Maybe I'm going to see one or two of you there. And I want to stay open to whatever comes my way. So who knows what else I'll study along the way or who I'll meet. And I try to stay open to new things, talk to people. And I really love having daughters. One just woke up and is sitting on the sofa giving you this. So yeah, I love to kind of be in the middle of my life and knowing that the part where I kind of checked a lot of things off my list, knowing or not knowing, is over, and now I can just enjoy what else is coming. So yeah, just.
Thank you so much. That was really beautiful. My other question is, well, more complicated because it's not personal, it's more general, but it's discussed argument that I search on social media, and I wanted to know your opinion because you're a professional. My question is, do you think it's more important to explore space and find a planet that welcomes life, or we should concentrate on repairing the damages brought to the Earth?
That's a very complex question that has a very simple answer from my perspective, and the answer is both. It's like a lot of people that come to my counseling also ask me, should I do this or that? And the first thing I ask them is, what if you do neither or both? And even though people then end up deciding one thing or the other, or maybe something totally different, the pure like process of seeing that there's more than two options opens their minds to how could we combine things. And coming back to your question, like in the detail, a lot of things that we learn for and from spaceflight can and will help us to solve problems on Earth. I mean, that's what happened in the past and what will hopefully happen for the future. For example, greenhouse effect was first observed and understood on Venus. So by learning about other planets, about space exploration, we learn about our own planet as well, and we develop the technology to hopefully save it and to make life better for people on Earth. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, nice to hear your words on that. Also, maybe interesting to see your flexibility, your interdisciplinarity, and that may also be a nice gift to the girls that sometimes you don't have to be one thing only, and you can pursue several passions of yourself and what you like to do. Exactly. So next is Noemi Salinaro for a question.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to say that I'm deeply honored to have the chance to talk to you today. I have three questions. The first question you have already partially answered. It is about the difficulties which can be encountered in planning a real mission to Mars. What do you think might be these difficulties? Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say the technology side is kind of obvious. We have a lot of things that we do not have a solution for yet. So the we don't have a spaceship that will bring people to Mars. We do not have spacesuits that will work on Mars. For example, the cooling system that we use on the ISS EMUs, like the suits that they use for EVAs on the ISS, that cooling system will not work on the surface of Mars, stuff like that. And we do not have the technology yet to build a habitat to sustain people for several weeks or even months on another planet. But we will get there. All this technology is in development, and let's say 10, 15, 20 years from now, it will be ready if, you never know what happens on Earth, political wise, whatever. So that's the one side. But the bigger challenge, I think, as I already kind of said, is the team human factor psychology perspective, because you will need a group of people that have to be carefully selected and trained. And one thing people think about is sending a crew that will go to Mars eventually to Antarctica for a winter over, so for 11 or 12 months in Antarctica, because if they can form a team and do that and survive and thrive, then they are kind of better prepared for 2 more years of the same, just different and a little bit more life-threatening. Yeah, maybe not even a little bit more. I mean, staying in Antarctica is quite life-threatening. Anyway, yeah. So I think preparing the people to go there and to understand what they need to stay healthy, mental and physically, mentally, yeah.
Thank you. Obviously, you are in an isolated situation, so the psychological aspects are really important. My second question was about the time you think is going to take to go to Mars, but you have already answered while answering this question. And my third question was about the experiments that you have done during this mission. What do you think was the experiment that led to the most significant results? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm quite hard pressed answering that, like, to point one out. And also the question would be, what is your measurement for most significant? Like, is it impact factor for publishing, or is it like how meaningful it is for humankind, whatever? We did have so many different experiments, biology, geology, psychology, medical experiments, and so on. And several of those results got published already. I mean, there's also like my personal favorite ones, but I can pick out 1 or 2 and tell you about it. So one experiment was a medical experiment that was done at the same time by the crew on the ISS. So Matthias Maurer was up there at the time. And it was about eye, health. If you go to space, because of the microgravity, your bodily fluids go up, and you have a higher blood pressure in your upper torso and head, and that leads to changes in your eye. And astronauts that spend several months on the ISS, when they come back, they have a higher risk of cataracts and other eye problems. And they also change their eyesight a little bit. That is reversible mostly. At least long-time studies suggest that they don't keep those problems. But we don't understand yet how they develop. Like, is it like after 1 week, it happens? Or is it gradually over a certain amount of time? And so they developed a process where you can use your iPhone or iPad, put on a micro camera, and then film your own eye background. Like, your colleague can do it, your crewmate can film your eye, and then you can send those pictures to Earth, and they can look for changes. And we were the control group for the ISS doing the same experiment to check how big the microgravity has an impact on how you do the process, like how you film the eye and how the handling is. That was quite interesting, and also nice to know that Matthias Maurer is doing the same thing that I'm doing to my colleagues at night. We had to put in the eye drops to make your pupils bigger, and then you couldn't see afterwards. So yeah, that was quite funny. And another experiment that I really liked was the microbiology one, where we went outside of the habitat, sampled the Earth in several meters and kilometers distance. And then we checked, like in the lab, we prepared the DNA. So I extracted the DNA out of those samples. And later they were checked in the lab for, what did we, like as analog astronauts on our EVAs, bring outside, like what microbiome from ourselves was distributed in the landscape and how much was there depending on how far away you were from the habitat. And also the other way around, how much stuff did we bring in from the outside? Because if you go to Mars looking for life, it would be nice to find real life from Mars and not something that we brought from Earth. And also, you never know what you find if there are any microbes, probably not nice ones. You don't want to bring them back inside your habitat or on Earth. So yeah, that was another one that I really liked because I could do what I love in the lab and also because it's quite interesting and important. And I could go on like this. There's a long list. And you can also, if you are interested, check the mission reports are on the ÖWF website, and you can check all the experiments and the results and the resulting papers there and read up. And what is also very, very interesting and nice to see is the development, because there are several experiments that were part of several missions already, like the tumbleweed you saw before, the Mars rover that is like a tumbleweed, basically, like spines, and then it can roll in the wind by itself. That was part of 3 missions, and you could see how it improved from mission to mission and how they implemented the knowledge that they got. That's quite fascinating. And yeah, that again, for me, is like one of the biggest perks that I get to do so many different experiments from different subjects. If you are a scientist, then normally you only get to work in your field. And as an analog astronaut, you can take a peek into different fields and learn about them. That's really nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I kind of feel bad for Elena, because in the beginning she said she had 3 questions and everyone else got to ask all of their questions and she only got 1. So I don't know, Carmen, if
Yeah, sure. Elena, do you have any other questions? Maybe did we skip over you?
Yes, I had another question, but no problem, really.
You can ask it now if you want, if it fits.
Thank you very much. And you have already answered the tweet. And which of the missions you've taken part in has provided the most important research insights?
Yeah, so I couldn't decide because I think all of them are important and they build on each other. And also, I mean, it's not only us, because our results go out in the scientific community, and come and showed some of the papers that got out. And then NASA, ESA, we also collaborate with ESA, for example. So we have several projects regarding textile development. We have a 3D printer that ESA gave us that we took to the missions and then used. And so you never know what will come out of the experiment that you did. Maybe it's just a university project or a PhD project, or maybe it's something that will actually go to Mars later on. You don't know. So yeah, it's going to be nice if people walk on Mars and I'm sitting in front of a screen and watching, and I'm like, oh, I know this part of the suit and I was part of developing it. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think also the different experiments you've now highlighted also shows how, how different kind of fields work together to kind of push things forward. So
yeah, that's also something maybe for everyone that I wanted to add that you said before, Carmen, that it's really in the ÖWF or also in our missions, there's people from all fields. We have nutritionists, we have like people that have a master's degree in training and sports. We have medical doctors, psychologists, we have even like Jura, what's the
law students. I wanted to say
thanks,
the same
law,
thing.
And people that are good in human factors or project management, and not only engineers or biologists or geologists. So yeah, if you find a field that you feel, or we even have artists, because one woman that maybe some of you may know, Barbara Imhoff, she's an artist based in Innsbruck, who is designing habitats and space modules and stuff like that. So you can combine whatever you feel passionate about and then bring it and combine it with space, for example. Because you showed Samantha, I mean, she plays several instruments, so she brought an instrument to space and had like being able to produce art and you know, spend time in a creative process is also something that prepares you to do then science, because that's actually, you have to do a creative process, making something new, right? So yeah, I just wanted to stress that you don't have to study engineering if you want to go into the space sector, but it's better to do something that you really love, because then you will be good in it, and you will be able to sustain it for a longer time, and that's the more important thing. And yeah, then the rest will kind of find its way.
Exactly. It's also nice to hear from your side, because I also agree that it's important to kind of pursue what interests you. And as you said, also, I wanted to say the same thing about law. I have a friend of mine who studied law, and then in the end, she was like, I really like space and exploration and that things. And now she's a space lawyer. So it's a lot of emerging fields as well. And I think there are not that many limitations on that. Exactly. And for the last personal question, I would like to ask Caterina D'Arigo to unmute herself.
Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you. I have two questions that are both about the AMA-D20 mission. You have already kind of answered the first question, but I'm going to ask you anyway in case you have something else to add. The question was, what was the most difficult thing to deal with during the AMA-D20 mission?
I would say the most difficult thing about AMA-D20 for me personally was the transfer back afterwards. Because if you spend 4 or 5 weeks in such a like a total, in a different world, I mean, that's actually what it feels like. You're not connected to your normal daily life at home, your family, your colleagues, whatever. And then when you get back, of course, people are like, how was it and how cool? But then, like, after 2 or 3 sentences, most of them are like zooming out and like, okay, whatever. And their life went on, and it's not easy to just go back in. And the only people that really understand what you went through, how it was like the good and the bad, are the people that were there with you. And everyone else will not be able to really get you. And then, of course, also, yeah, missing one thing and the other. And yeah, it just took me several days, actually. The first 1 or 2 days, I was just like, I don't know, paralyzed. I was sitting on my sofa and crying because it was just overwhelming. And I don't know, it took me some time. And it was like after being sick and getting back to health, kind of. That's what it feels like. And I guess people, like, the smallest thing that I can compare it is with if you go on a class trip and you are among people for 4 to 5 days and everything is like loud and crazy and amazing and you do stuff, and you get back home, you kind of sometimes get into such a little hole. That's how it feels like. And that's just bigger. And what really helped me was that I read a book by Michael Collins, one of the astronauts that was there for the moon landing. So he was the 3rd astronaut that did not land with Buzz and Aldrin on the moon, but he stayed in the capsule orbiting the moon that collected them back up to go back to Earth, right? So he was like the least known astronaut from that mission. And he was actually the first human to be behind the moon, like by himself for 45 minutes without any contact to Earth, and knowing that every single human is like on the other side of the moon and he's all by himself. So that book is one I really highly recommend. It's called Carrying the Fire. And he describes the same feeling when he got back from that moon mission. Like, you know, how do you go back to a normal life after you went to the moon and after you traveled the world going on parades, everyone was kind of celebrating you, and then you get back home, honey, I'm back home, and then she's like, yeah, here, whatever, change the diaper. Like, the contrast is so crazy. The human psyche needs some time to readjust. So, and yeah, that was actually something that I really kind of experienced somewhere between Michael Collins and class trip, I don't know. And the second time when I got back from Armenia, I already knew what was happening or what to expect, and it was way better because I knew beforehand I could manage myself and my feelings. And I want also to tell you that in Armenia we had an incident where during the mission it was really difficult because we had really strong rain, like a downpour, and our roof was leaking, like the habitat roof. And I mean, it's full of electricity and electronics, right? So water and that doesn't mix well. So I, as the commander, had to make the decision to abort, to like quit simulation and really leave the habitat, and cover everything up as best as we could and go back down to the field office where the on-site support team was staying. And that was like, in that moment, I really felt like, okay, this was it. We are not going to continue the mission. Millions of dollars like in the sand. Everyone is, depending on me to organize everything. And that was like really one of the biggest challenges for me in my life, actually, and also like as a leader and in that capacity. But as you did not hear that we aborted or like that we quit the mission, we were able to repair everything and to get back, and after 3 days move back in and continue and finish the mission. But yeah, that was like the moment I kind of in myself, I knew, okay, I have to make this decision. That was, yeah, crazy.
This incident that you told us about basically answers my second question. That was, did any unexpected event occur during the mission, or did everything go as planned?
Yeah. So in Israel, actually, everything, well, I mean, there's always the unknown is planned in, right? So we had a drone that did not fly, and we had a drone that did fly and did not come back and went in towards Egypt, which is not a good idea coming from Israel. So there were a lot of unforeseen events, but we did have the whole system in place to deal with them. So I wouldn't say that anything really unexpected happened. But in Armenia, that's really, that was not planned for and not expected. And but also overcoming that. And it was so great how the whole team, came together and worked together. And this kind of spirit, that's actually also what I take away from my daily life, that if people work together with a common goal and put aside differences and also like celebrate their differences and work with them, it's so amazing what you can accomplish. That every time I watch the news and I kind of get down, then I remember this feeling, and I know that a lot of young people are working on that and working together. So it gives me hope, and that keeps me going.
Thank you
so much. Thank you for your time. And this was the last in-person question. And I was wondering if that's okay with you to answer to some spontaneous questions, maybe
Sure.
2 or 3 more.
Yeah, sure.
I know that one girl, Manuela Cappuccini, has some issue with her microphone. So if you want to, you can write down to the chat, okay? And in the meantime, I would say to the interested girls, please hands up, and I will call your name. Yes. Here's the question from Manuela. It's in the chat.
If I have another, we really end up colonizing Mars, would there be a human value or habit that you might think? Good question. I think in general that extreme situations and environments bring out the good and best. It would be nice if it would be like this. No, the good and bad in people. So yeah, it might be that people colonizing Earth make it happen that we have a better society there that leaves out war or unfairness, stuff like that, because they start from scratch and they have a better go. But it's also possible that under extreme environments and scarce resources, the other end happens and they fight each other and they descend down into the not so nice parts of humanity. And of course, I hope for the first. And I think it's something that it's like more like a philosophical question. The same is true for Earth. And in the end, it comes back to every single person. Everyone gets up in the morning and gets to decide, do I want to do good or do I want to let go and not think about it and act whatever I like to? And as long as a lot of people carry on trying to be good and do good, I think there's a chance. So we don't know, and I can't answer that question, but I hope that we take the first road.
Thank you. I just realized that girls can't actually ends up.
Ah,
Or
okay.
yeah, so I will ask. Sorry, probably. Okay. So I have another question from Jaslyn Saini. If you want to, you can unmute.
I wanted to ask you, what do you do when you are not on a mission? Like when you come back from a mission, what do you do?
Yeah, so in the beginning, when I started to be an analog astronaut, I was still working in the public health department. So I had a 40-hour-a-week job as a team lead in the public health department. And after I quit that job, I was partly self-employed and still working as a employed lecturer on the side. And since last year, I'm fully self-employed. And as I said before, I'm a systemic counselor, so I have a private practice seeing clients or patients. And I also write books. I have a podcast. I translate books from English to German. I'm still lecturing several different subjects. So I have one lecturing contract in the end of this year for public health. So teaching students at my local university in their second semester about like the whole health system in Germany and global health and economics and stuff like that. But also infectious diseases, biology, several different things for several different universities where I take like single lecturing contracts. And yeah, I have my family with all the kids. Like my daily life is kind of boring. I'm sitting on my eating table in front of my laptop like now, and yeah, just living a normal day life. And then from time to time, I jump out and I go on the radio or for lectures or in the fall for the world's biggest analog, where I kind of dive into the space sector. And yeah, that's really kind of enriching to have both worlds, to not have to live in Cologne and travel worldwide as an astronaut for ESA, but being able to have a family and live at home and do all the things I love, but still be able to join the astronaut life from time to time. Yeah, that's how I live.
Yeah, very nice to hear.
Thank you very much.
For everybody wondering, I will include all of the things Anika just mentioned, like her book, the mission report, or also her contact data, if that's fine for you, Anika, in the follow-up email, if anybody's wondering or wants to have a look. In the meanwhile, I saw that two girls raised their hands. So Valentina, if you want, you can ask your question.
You're still muted.
Yeah, you're still muted.
No, yeah.
So I'm so sorry. So my question is, wouldn't it be interesting for you to be a classic astronaut, like to actually fly to space or something like that?
I mean, of course, I get asked that question, and I really appreciate you not saying a real astronaut, because we are real analog astronauts, is what we always say. Yeah, I think if a millionaire, and I would say one with a social conscience and morals, so that kind of counts out a lot of them, would pay me to fly to space, I would think about it. I would not like to just go on a cruise like some people do, just to see the Earth from above. I think that's not environmentally sustainable, and I wouldn't want to add that to my conscience. But to go there for like a short-term mission, 10 days, 20 days to do science, I would actually really think about it. And I think I would do it if I get the chance. But I would not like to, be an astronaut for ESA or one of the big agencies, because, as I said before, then you are not a scientist anymore. You're just, doing other people's science. You do a lot of, let's say, project management. You get a position at ESA where you're responsible for some area. You do a lot of public outreach, so talks, and you always smile and wave, and you stand for the organizational policy. So you are kind of not free to really speak your mind, let's say like this. You do commercials, whatever, what you're told. And it's really difficult to combine with the family life. And I mean, that's all the negative aspects, at least from my perspective. Of course, there's a lot of positive things that make it up. But for me, I would not want to live that life anymore right now at the point of in my life. And would I go to Mars? I don't think so, because I really like my life, and I would like to be here to see my kids grow up. And yeah, just, I love running, I love nature. And 1 month of isolation already told me that, of course, I could do it. I'm quite sure I would be able to do it. But I don't know if it's worth it for the gain. It's really dangerous. And just for the fame of being the first person to set my foot on Mars, I don't think that in my point of life that I'm in, I wouldn't, the calculation wouldn't make it worth for me. But I encourage everyone to find their own answer, and also their own reasons for doing things. Yeah.
We have another question from Julia Gatwold.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very interesting to hear from your experiences. And I have a question: what other technological steps or whatever would have to happen that we could live on Mars, or at least go there? What would we have to do?
Yeah. So the first is that the spaceship going to Mars would need radiation protection, and also maybe artificial gravity, like a ring circling or something, because one of the biggest challenges will be the bone and muscle mass loss on the way to Mars. So if you go there for 5 or 6 months, and all the studies from the ISS, how astronauts come back to Earth and then they can't even walk by themselves because they need rehab for 2 weeks to be able to regain their muscle and bone density. So people going to Mars without any countermeasures would then be on Mars. And even though you only have 1/3 of the gravity, you would then have to carry a spacesuit that is basically your own weight. And that's not humanly possible. Of course, then you could have exoskeletons that support you, for example. So there's going to be solutions, but right now the research is into having spaceships that will land some artificial gravity, so you can train in gravity and retain your muscle and bones, stuff like that. And then one other thing is that you would have to send missions uncrewed before that, set up like little reactors, fabrics that produce methane, for example, for fuel, or that build a 3D print a habitat out of regolith and material that's on Mars, stuff like that. And all that is under development, but nothing like concrete yet that is done and finished. And again, as I mentioned before, the spacesuits to work on Mars are under development, but not ready yet. The cooling system needs a vacuum that we have right now. So we need a different cooling system, because even though the atmosphere on Mars is quite thin, it's still there. And also a big problem is dust, because on Mars there's a lot of dust, and it's not like normal, like sand on the beach. It's really like small and very sharp. It has, it's like asbestos or something that can get into your lungs. And you can imagine how that works with electronics and hinges and stuff like that. So you need a way of not getting the dust inside of your habitat, your spacesuit, whatever. Yeah, and I could go on. There's a lot of technical challenges that we have not fully met yet. But the good thing is that all of that is known. And, once you know your challenge, you can start working on it. And there's so big steps being done. Like when I started 7 years ago to now, it's amazing. It's like everything has doubled and tripled. It's exponential how things develop. So I'm very confident that the technology side will be figured out in the near future. Yeah.
Thank you.
We can see another question in the chat, and it's from Mariana Calabro.
I saw it. It's also good to add on the question before. So actually, the AI development has been so quick over the last 2 years. And during Armenia, we had one experiment that involved AI, and that had the exact same question. We had an experiment set up with a bioreactor and algae, and we had to keep it alive. And we had several runs where we had any problems simulated that we had to solve. And we had runs with AI support, runs without AI support, and runs with MST support. and combinations of those. And then we had to evaluate which of those was the easiest for us and how fast were we able to solve the problem. And no big surprise, the AI support was, of course, very helpful. But that was just scratching the surface. And since then, AI has developed so rapidly that I'm quite sure that future missions will use it way more and in so many different ways than ever thought of before. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think it circles back to what you said before. There may be problems or opportunities also that we are not even conscious about now, but in the future, so many new things get developed, and yeah, it's very interesting to be able to live that.
Yeah.
We have two more questions. Maybe Noemi, you can go on.
Thank you. Are there any other analog astronaut missions you're going to take part in the near future?
So I'm going to be part of the Earth side, as I said before, of the world's biggest analog, which I'm really looking forward to because I haven't had this perspective before. And not for nothing, ESA uses astronauts as Earthcom, for example, like the person sitting on console and mission control, talking to the astronauts on the ISS, because that person is the one having the direct contact, and it's really helpful if you understand what they're going through and how the experience feels from their side and their perspective, to minimize the us versus them, for example. So I'm really looking forward to being Earthcom, for example, and to experience a mission from the side of Earth and also get a look into flight planning, stuff like that. And then the UAVF is planning, of course, new missions. There's going to be smaller missions with a new habitat in Portugal that is being constructed right now. And then in the end of 2028 or maybe beginning of 2029, the next big mission in a big desert is going to happen. And I mean, I'm not getting younger, and there's going to be a new selection round for analog astronauts, maybe in the end of this year, maybe next year. Not definite yet. So I'm quite sure there's going to be new, younger colleagues of mine. But as long as I stay fit and I feel like it and I have the time and everything, I'm not saying no. I would like to do another one. And also, it would be interesting for me to be on the on-site support team. First, you get to see the country, because I did not see any thing of Israel or Armenia, at least not except the capitals, because I was just flying in, spending 5 weeks in the habitat and flying out. But the on-site support team gets to, have off days and travel. So nothing definite yet where I kind of signed on the line, but I'm not going anywhere and trying to stay and take part.
Yeah, interesting to hear. Victoria, what is your question?
Hello, good morning. My question is, how did your day-to-day life look like in the analog mission in the Israeli desert? Like, for example, what time did you wake up?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't really talked about that. So it's actually quite similar to what the astronauts have on the ISS. So we have a daily activity plan that flight planning is working out for us and sending to us the day before. And that puts your time into quarter-hourly windows and tells you exactly what to do when, who's doing what. So we get up, depending on the time zone. In Israel, we got up really early, like 4 or 5 in the morning, because for one, we had to escape the heat in the middle of the day. And the second reason being that Vienna was in a different time zone, and we had to try to at least synchronize our days a little bit. And in Armenia, we got up around 7-ish, and then you have like an hour for breakfast, getting ready, stuff like that, and then your day starts with the schedule, and it's really stuffed. So you have experiments. If you go out on EVA, you have the donning, doffing of the spacesuit, which takes several hours. You have a lot of housekeeping, like repairs, stocking, like the food, cooking, of course, cleaning, programming, data archives. You have to, write reports, sort through all the data, send it to Earth, stuff like that. So there's never a time where you don't have to do anything. Then you have briefings, like in the morning, you have a briefing to discuss the day, and then you have an evening debriefing where you like bring your perspectives, because the people that went out on EVA experienced the day differently than the ones that stayed in and did, I don't know, microgreens growing experiments. So you're all on the same page and have all the information. Yeah, and then in the evening, sometimes you have like 1 or 2 hours where you can play a board game or read or talk. But most of the time, you still have some repairs to do or prepare something for the next day. And in the beginning of the missions, that was true for both of them. It was really exhausting. So we did not get a lot of sleep, like 3-4 hours a night, and we were working nonstop to make everything ready and to get into the practice. But then towards the half or end of the mission, it gets a little bit more laid back, and you have 2 or 3 black days during the mission where you have like free time and can sleep and relax a little bit, catch up with work emails, whatever. Yeah. And maybe also important to mention is the isolation protocol. I mean, we try to simulate being on Mars with a time delay. So of course there's no Zoom calls with your families or WhatsApp chat. But we can write emails and receive and send video messages. And in the evenings, like after 10 or something, then you can also use your social media. Because the rationale is that if you post something and people see it later, you won't notice if there's a time delay. Yeah, and trying to think if I missed something. Of course, you try to, same as an ISS, for example, if somebody has a birthday, or in Armenia, we had Easter, the Easter holidays during the mission, then you try to make something special to, like as a commander, I brought a present and I brought Easter eggs to hide them, to have a hunt in the habitat, stuff like that. So you try to have rituals and things that keep you going and that keep morale up. That's also something that you try to include. And we did have some discussion, for example, about time for exercise, because in Armenia we had some exercise equipment. And in the beginning, flight planning did not give us or like dedicate any time in our daily activity plan for exercise. And then we asked them to do it, please, because we realized even if we have a free slot, there's so much to do that we won't like prioritize exercise. And when they put it in the schedule, then people started using the equipment and doing exercise. So that's also a learning curve for flight planning and for different crews, maybe, how to really schedule and plan everything.
Okay, very interesting. And then we have one last question from Julia Pinna.
Hi, thank you for spending your time with us. I have only one question, because for the other you have an answer. So, what is the most difficult and strange adjustment that you find during the mission?
I think, again, I always are very hard pressed to single things out and say, okay, this is it. So always I answer with 2 or 3 things, sorry. So one difficult thing was, of course, being away from my family. I mean, my kids have school events and doctor's appointments and stuff like that. And of course, I want to know what's going on and feel out of control or not like connected. So I tried to find ways to mitigate that. That was one part. And also like, you know, the 2 separate worlds going on, that in the evening, if you read an email from your family and maybe something happened and you are down from that, and then you have something scheduled the next day where you have to concentrate and be present. So of course that's not easy. We are all human beings. But then another thing that comes to mind is actually like the roles. The commander role in Armenia was really challenging for me, because I'm, let's say, kind of a cooperative leader. I myself like to understand why I'm supposed to do things. So if I try to explain to people what is our objective, why do we want to do what we do, because I try to like take them with me and make them cooperate and as a team. And that has worked well for me in the past. But it's like some of my male colleagues have a totally different leading style, and they are more like military hierarchy. You do what you're told. approach, is quite helpful. And that was my challenge, to adapt and to use the leading style that is most helpful under the circumstances. Because one example I realized when we went from the field office in Armenia, that was in a town close by, to the habitat. We had only 1 or 2 cars to shuttle people back and forth. And in the beginning, I was like, yeah, just figure it out. And then it took like 15 minutes until people discussed who's going when and with whom and so on. And they were kind of disappointed with me and looking at me or for leadership from me. So I talked to Nigo, my colleague, who was deputy commander for the Israel mission, and he was on my team in Armenia, and said, oh, I'm struggling with that. And he was like, yeah, sometimes people, even though they are grown-ups, they just want to be told what to do. Just tomorrow, just take the key, give it to one person, and tell the person you are driving, take 4 people, go. And I felt like bad about it because they are like same age as me, and I kind of felt like I'm treating them like not grown-ups if I order them around on those like basic daily little things. But I, took his advice, and the next day I was like, here, you go, drive, take people, go. And in 5 minutes, everyone was in the cars and gone, and everyone was happy. So it was helpful for me to learn that, it's not always the same things that work. And I took a lot of, how to lead people away from that mission, but it was a learning experience. And I'm quite sure there were circumstances or like events where people thought, oh, what's she doing? Or why isn't she doing this or that? That was also quite difficult to adapt to.
But also interesting to see that it's like a learning curve for everybody, right? For the analog astronauts themselves, for the flight plan, as you mentioned. But yeah, for everybody. And maybe connecting to that, we saw, or like there's one last question in the chat. I think with that we can then conclude the meeting and the Q&A session. But like, how long does it even take to plan and prepare such a mission? Do you have an estimate for that?
Yeah, so I would say several years, like 3 or 4 years, because even like once the last mission ends or already when it's going, first contact is made with potential host countries for the next mission, because all the legal requirements and all the contracts and so on, that has to be done a long time beforehand. Then, of course, the more obvious stuff is the training. You need people for the MSc and for it's not only the astronauts. I mean, they are the visible ones, but the rest is even more important. And so you need to have people that are willing and able to dedicate time, effort, energy, money to the time that they need them for the mission. And then you have 1 year before the mission starts, you have the mission specific, it's called dress rehearsals. So training weekends where you go through all the experiments, you simulate mini missions to get into the feeling, stuff like that. You prepare all the experiments, the procedures that you will use and so on. Also, the experiments are selected 1.5 years before the mission, and they have to be adapted and developed and trained. So yeah, a lot of effort going in. And then maybe 2 or 3 months prior to the mission, the containers are shipped with all the equipment to the host country. The habitat has to be built. And then in the end, everything comes together. There's a lot of media outreach and media work, lectures before and after. So yeah, also after the mission, you have like half a year where everything is sorted and published, and you have conferences, and then there's science workshop about a year after a mission where all the scientists come together and people from the mission, which is quite nice because you get to see everyone again, and then you see the result of the experiments that you did, and that concludes kind of the mission. So I would say maybe 5 to 6 years all in all for one mission from start to end. So it's quite a big effort involving a lot of people.
Yeah, and I can see, or I think you can all see it on how like that connects all of the different parts, like the science part and also the mission support center. And for instance, if anybody's interested, for instance, with the dress rehearsals, that kind of connects to answers you gave before. I remember myself being there, and seeing where they like kind of simulated starting a fire, and then people were then kind of like, yeah, trained to yeah, how to respond. And I think that kind of also highlights on how many components have to work in order for it to like, yeah, for the analog astronauts having like a as smooth as it gets journey during the mission itself. So yeah, I think with that, we're at the end of our Q&A session. First of all, a big thank you to you, Anika, for sharing your story, being so patient on like a Sunday morning with us. It was really nice listening to you. And also a big thank you to all of you girls for being here. Maybe Anika, so that you know, they're currently completing a module on basic physics and all of that kind of introduction to rocket science. I hope everybody is, yeah, learning a lot, seeing new things, maybe connecting with other people. We're going to exchange contacts in between the Italian and the Austrian delegation for everybody who agreed to that. So yeah, thank you very much for today. Yeah, we're going to see each other sometime, and thank you again.
Thank you very much for having me. It was quite fun, and I hope to see many of you again in the future in internships or missions or other projects. I just put my Insta handle in there if you want to contact me, and I appreciate you putting the information in the mail. Read my book.
Sure, I will also include the book. Yes, I've heard very good things about it.
Yeah. Okay, great.
All right,
Really
thank you.
nice.
And see you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.